Creak, creak. In my wedding dress, I stood frozen in front of my soon-to-be husband's waiting room. I heard a strange noise coming from inside, a small shaking sound of a table and a raspy voice. A thump, thump. I had a bad feeling. I opened the door just enough to peek inside, hoping not to be noticed. There, I saw the back of my fiancé Daniel standing in front of the table in his tuxedo. I had always imagined how handsome he would look, my pride and joy. But what I saw filled me with utter despair. Trembling, I held up my smartphone and started live streaming. I was determined to expose the sin that stole my happiness. They would pay for their betrayal, and I would ensure I got my revenge. Let's rewind a bit. After graduating from university, I started working as a spatial designer. I've been working for 4 years now. While being a designer sounds glamorous, the reality is that the salary is low and the workload is heavy, especially on weekends. I've been working tirelessly, and recently, I've been entrusted with designing stores for famous brands. I finally felt like I had made it. At the peak of my career progress, my boyfriend Daniel proposed to me. We met through a mutual friend during our university years and started dating as sophomores. Daniel, who was both academically and athletically gifted, was popular at the university. He graduated with honors and excelled in the futsal club. Even after we started dating, girls who were popular on campus continued to confess their feelings to him. My friends thought he seemed like a playboy, but I never doubted his faithfulness. He had a good personality and looks that stood out. Daniel has been working as a salesperson for a major parts manufacturer since graduation, and he is seen as having a promising future. Lately, he's been busy with work, creating sales materials, and often coming home late. He said it was a job that could only be done on the company's computer, so he couldn't work from home. Since I usually got home earlier, I took on the majority of the house chores. I accepted it as part of our lives. Recently, preparations for our wedding and meetings with our families have kept us busy, leaving little time for ourselves. This had been a concern for me. I thought that my worries would vanish once the wedding was over and we settled into our married life. But I could never have predicted what was to come. Our 7-year relationship, which had begun during our university days, was about to end in the worst possible way. About half a year after accepting Daniel's proposal, we went back to our hometown to introduce him to my family. My younger sister, Amelia, who was 2 years younger, had surprisingly come home too. At that time, Daniel and I were living in an apartment a 30-minute drive from our parents' house. Amelia, who lived alone at a convenient distance from both our place and our parents', was meeting us at our parents' house for the first time in several years. "Huh, you're home. That's unusual. I hadn't heard that Amelia was coming." "Well, yeah. I wanted to see who my big sister was marrying," she replied. "Oh, so it's this guy. Nice to meet you. I'm Amelia." She was always overly friendly, but something about Amelia's sweet, babyish voice bothered me a little. "Nice to meet you. I'm Daniel," he greeted back in a gentlemanly way. The way Amelia grinned at that moment made a strange discomfort grow inside me, but I didn't think much of it, as Daniel didn't seem to react unusually. My sister Amelia and I are polar opposites. Amelia, who is good at winning people's hearts, always gets what she wants. She's not exactly a beauty, but her charming smile captures people's hearts. Despite attending a high school with strict rules, she was never disciplined for things like dyeing her hair or shortening her skirt. I know she received more allowance from our parents than I did, being the older one. From the day she was born, she seemed to know what to say to please others and act in a way that made her liked by everyone. On the other hand, our parents often told me that I was too serious and that I should be more like Amelia. Amelia currently works as a salesperson for a mobile phone company and has been there for 2 years. Apparently, she's consistently among the top 10 salespeople nationwide. My sister and I have completely opposite personalities. While we haven't fought since we grew older, we haven't been particularly close either. There were times I wished I could be more like Amelia, who knows how to navigate the world effortlessly. But now I have Daniel, and a happy life awaits us. Sure, there were moments when I felt envious comparing myself to my younger sister. But now, I was about to start a new family with the love of my life. I had a positive outlook on life at that time. 3 months passed, and we finished registering our marriage. Preparations for the wedding ceremony were steadily proceeding. I was mainly the one pushing forward with the wedding plans. Daniel, in his 4th year at the company and taking on more responsibilities, sometimes couldn't come home due to work. Initially, Daniel was enthusiastic about the wedding ceremony, but gradually he showed less and less interest. "Hey, about the wedding guests. I just got home and I'm tired. Can we do this another time? Besides, do whatever you like. I trust you. Oh, and I will be coming home tomorrow. He would casually dismiss wedding topics like this. Deep down, I was frustrated, but I took a deep breath to calm myself down. Are you sure you're okay taking on so much work before the wedding? Aren't you tired? I'm fine, thanks. As the wedding ceremony approached, Daniel seemed more swamped with work. I wished he could show more concern about it as my fiancé. However, I tried to remain patient and supportive. I thought that Daniel being recognized at work and increasing his income was a good thing for us as a couple, and I tried to stay positive. Amidst all this, on a weekday night with only a month left before the wedding ceremony, Daniel, who had been coming home late as usual, came home unusually early. You came home early today. Dinner is ready, I said. Before I knew it, all the house chores had become my responsibility. Thanks, but more importantly, I have something to discuss with you, he replied. What's wrong? I asked, wondering why he seemed unusually excited. Do you want to get new cell phones? If we buy 2 at the same time, it's a good deal. Some I do business with said they can give us a bonus for introducing their services. It was true that I had been wanting to replace my cell phone, and Daniel had been complaining about his old one. But considering the expenses for the wedding ceremony, we needed to save money. What's the bonus? New models are expensive, aren't they? It's about $4,000 for 2. The bonus is $4,000. His explanation about the bonus faded as I fixated on the amount. Well, actually, I already bought them. Excuse me. He said he had already bought 2 of the latest smartphones, encouraged by someone he does business with. You just have to pay your share. The device fee is in installments. Though we both worked and were about to become husband and wife, we had agreed to manage our bank accounts separately for a while and discuss it again when we wanted kids in the future. So now, he wanted me to pay for my portion of the phone he had bought on his own. But what's bought is bought, and we can't return it. I remembered we were planning a surprise using smartphones for the wedding ceremony. The latest model could capture beautiful images, so maybe it was okay. Seeing Daniel looking pleased, I lost the will to get angry and forced myself to accept the situation. 1 month later, our long-awaited wedding ceremony finally arrived. I chose the pure white dress with my mother and mother-in-law. Daniel, who was busy with work and couldn't help with the preparations much, will surely be surprised when he sees me today. After entering the venue and getting ready, my close friend from university, Mila, came to greet me in the bride's waiting room. Olivia, congratulations, Mila said, tears in her eyes. Thank you. Hey, do you think the surprise will go well? I asked. I had planned a special event and asked the venue staff to prepare my smartphone to be connected to the screen. We were set to perform a surprise interview with the guests. I thought a regular event would be boring, so I asked the staff to do various things in terms of production for the ceremony to meet my demands. I wanted to pay attention to the details, an occupational hazard of being a spatial designer. The guests are already seated, so why don't you show the situation in the waiting room, like a sideshow, just like the groom's waiting room? You're right, that sounds really fun. Since I had planned the smartphone performance with the staff without involving Daniel, I hadn't told him about it yet. It would be a surprise if I suddenly informed him during the ceremony, so maybe it would be nice to give him a heads up and show him a little bit in advance. Feeling excited, I headed towards Daniel's waiting room. In front of his waiting room, I took a deep breath slowly, imagining how great Daniel would look in his tuxedo. Thinking that, I opened the door a little bit. Then I heard some noise, a small shaking sound of a table and a raspy voice. I wondered if he was with someone. I opened the door a bit more quietly so as not to be noticed. I saw the back of Daniel in his tuxedo, standing and facing the table. Peeking in from a bit of an angle, I could see someone lying on the table. Leaning a bit more to take a better look, I was shocked to see Amelia lying on the table. Unaware of me watching them, the two were so focused on each other. I was frozen for about 5 seconds, but then I comprehended what was happening. Surprisingly calm, I immediately took out my smartphone and turned on the live stream. I was determined to have him obliterated by society. The two in front of me were completely oblivious to my presence, and I kept filming them with my smartphone for the next 10 minutes. The venue staff had done an excellent job preparing for the surprise in the hall with the guests. This entire incident was displayed on the large screen in real time. Ironically, the new smartphone came in handy. The clear image was evident even from a distance. As it was being filmed, The guests watching the live stream were speechless. My parents and in-laws noticed the commotion, and my father-in-law was furious. My mom held him back as he raged, "That idiot son. I'm going to punish him right now." He recorded the images on the screen as evidence. After live streaming the whole incident, I stayed hidden and watched the situation, straining my ears to listen to their conversation. "Didn't you say that you wouldn't go back home when Olivia and I went to greet your parents?" It seemed they were talking about the time we went to greet my family half a year ago. "Sorry, I just thought it'd be fun and popped in. Your sister was a bit sucky, wasn't she?" She looked hilarious. It was tough pretending it was our first time meeting each other, but we weren't found out, were we? Anger welled up inside me. Was all that pretending to be meeting for the first time just an act? I couldn't believe they'd had a relationship since half a year ago. She basically never suspects me of cheating. I've never been caught since university. This guy was a serial cheater. I couldn't stop trembling with all the anger I have for him. I momentarily became dazed with shame and emptiness, realizing I had never doubted his fidelity once in the 7 years we've been together since our sophomore year in university. As the two adjusted their clothing and started heading in my direction as if nothing had happened, panic set in. I needed to avoid being discovered. I stepped away from the door and quickly headed for the family waiting room. Inside, both my parents and my in-laws were there, all seemingly at a loss for words. My mother was sobbing uncontrollably, unable to accept my sister's betrayal. Although I should have been the one crying, oddly enough, I didn't shed a tear and just stood there silently. Then, unaware of anything that had transpired, Daniel and Amelia entered the room. "Dad, how do I look in my tuxedo?" Daniel asked, exemplifying the phrase, "ignorance is bliss." My father-in-law trembled with anger. "Ha! What's with you all?" Daniel asked, confused. "How dare you?" my father-in-law shouted, barely restrained by my mother-in-law and my dad, who looked ready to punch him. With great effort, I calmed myself down, and my mother-in-law began to explain everything that had happened. As she spoke, Daniel and Amelia's faces turned as pale as ghosts. "Oh hell, this is... explain everything right here, right now," Daniel stammered. Apparently, they had met through work about 3 months after Daniel's proposal. Daniel, who works at a parts manufacturer, met Amelia, who works at a mobile phone company, at a social gathering between the two companies. Unaware that Amelia was my sister, Daniel seduced her, and their relationship developed into an affair. When he found out she was my sister, he didn't end their relationship. It turned out that Daniel had been having regular affairs since his university years. To have not noticed and married him filled me with an indescribable mix of emotions. I was ashamed of how insensitive and unaware I had been. "Oh, I want to marry you, Olivia. I guess you could call this me being too young and not thinking about the consequences at all. I couldn't help but cheat. I'm really sorry, but I swear I'll turn over a new leaf and be devoted to you from now on." Even if he apologized, it was too late now. I had already decided to divorce him. I had nothing to say to this utterly irrational and foolish man. But let me just say this. When you apologize, you should say, "I'm truly sorry," right? Why don't you just start over as a grown-up? "Oh, I'm truly sorry," he stammered. My sister Amelia remained silent, looking down. She was still trying to rely on others even at a time like this. Instead of feeling anger, I pitied her. I left Daniel, who didn't want a divorce, behind as I walked out of the waiting room. I hated my serious personality even at a time like this, but now handling the guests was my top priority. I headed straight to the venue and went around apologizing to the wedding staff and guests. All the guests looked at me with sympathetic eyes. Daniel's associates, friends, and colleagues said, "We will make him take responsibility." At that moment, my feelings of disappointment were stronger than my anger. However, there were people whose expressions couldn't hide their outrage, as if it were their own matter. Above all, it was clear that the two had lost their social status, credibility, and all the relationships they had built with so many people. 1 week after the nightmare wedding, Daniel lost his position at work and had to resign. Several of our mutual friends from university were also invited, but all of them said they had cut ties with him. Amelia was also fired because Daniel's workplace contacted hers about their affair. They were disowned by their parents who had loved them so much. I claimed damages from the two of them and filed for divorce. 2 months had passed since the wedding, and just when I started to think, was that incident really a dream? I received a call from the venue. To my surprise, they invited me to work as a wedding designer. Apparently, they appreciated my abilities as a designer in the planning and production of this wedding. For someone seriously considering career advancement after the wedding was canceled, it was a dream come true. I accepted the offer without any hesitation. Now, I'm a wedding designer and have become somewhat known in the industry. I work hard every day to make other people's weddings happy, even though it's ironic that I've had a terrible wedding experience. By the way, I put the smartphone up for sale on an online marketplace right after the divorce. I guess Daniel had bought the two phones for my sister at that time. Since it was a new model that had just been released, I was able to sell it for the same price as if it were new. With the payment for damages I received from Daniel and Amelia, along with this money, I'm planning a very nice, luxurious solo trip.